Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm Allie from Heart and Soul Connected, and I'm here today with medium Kim Copeland, who is a dear friend of mine. We've worked together for several years, and Kim is a medium and a psychic and has her classes in those things and taught me a great deal about how to do those things. And she's also been a hospice nurse for many years. And so we're here to talk today about grief. And yeah, it isn't really a happy thought. It's kind of like watching a Holocaust movie, I suppose, for some people. But we would like to bring some information and some loving uh, gestures. One of the things that made me want to do this really was hearing the saying that grief is love with just nowhere to go. And so
Oh,
I'm going to open here with that. And Kim,
oh,
welcome. Thank you for being here. Yeah.
hi,
Yeah.
Allie. Thank you. I know this topic is, I don't want to make it a Debbie Downer today at all,
No,
because the
no,
thing is, we all will have grief in
we
our
do.
life. And
Absolutely.
I think so many of us uh, don't know what to do with it, or even how to handle it if you have a friend. How do you help a
Mhm,
friend who's going through grief, or a loved one, or yeah, and we can go through grief for so many different reasons.
mhm,
We can have
mhm.
loss
Yeah.
of a job, we can have a divorce, we can have a, loss of our health, we can
Mhm.
have even, um, you know, a, a news like we have a terminal illness. So there's
Correct.
there's so many different reasons that we have
Yeah.
loss. I mean, it could even be the loss of a season. Like maybe we love summer and we're going
And
into
it's
the
over.
fall.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And we can have the collective grief, which I've talked about before several times, what we dealt with during COVID and what we are dealing with some dysfunction in the news. And so, the wars, those types of things, those can impact us, and we may not even realize that those bring us a lot of grief as well. So,
Oh,
thank
yes,
you.
of
Yeah.
course. I mean,
Yeah.
um, yeah, because many, especially watching this in this
Mhm.
tribe here, are
Yes.
empaths, and that we don't
Absolutely.
even know where it's coming from.
We don't. And we don't realize it until perhaps something trips us up again. Now, I remember reading that when we have a grief, that and then we don't ever it doesn't ever go away, but we deal with it, we live with it. But then when another grieving thing happens to us, it's multiplied by the past grief we've had. And
Yes,
so, you could say that this could be a continuous sort of cycle. And so it sort of brings you all back to that initial grief and adds to it. So it makes it very difficult for us to
yes.
deal with. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
say it's cumulative, right? And then
Yes.
and then how we process that very first grief then will affect everything else or down the line. Yes, and
Right.
you may know this, you probably do. My mother died when I was 12, so that was a pretty
Right.
big grief experience for me. But back
Yeah.
then, in 1972, um, my dad was like, "Oh, let's not talk about it. You don't
Oh,
talk about it, and you just don't cry we're moving on. We're just moving on." And so that was pretty, and then you think, "Oh," and he kept saying, you got to be strong." And I remember the words, "You're strong, Kim. You're strong. You can do that. You're strong." And I mean, I know I am strong. I guess I still have to remind myself. I don't know.
you are
I
very
don't
strong. But who wants to be when you're 12?
know. We don't.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yes.
So it's
Right.
really different now. The world has opened up. I mean, we at least accept counseling. It's not a
Yes.
four-letter word.
Mhm. Yes. I
Yeah.
still think people have a really hard time, though, um, gathering around people who are grieving. There is no time frame for grief, and a lot of people, like your dad, would say, "Let's just get over it and move on," whereas he probably needed to process it, but that's what it was at the time. But, the idea that, I've heard many widows and many, parents of of children who have passed say everybody's there for you during the funeral, bringing over food, checking in on you and everything. And then they don't come around at all.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Okay. Right. And that's a good point, Allie. First of all, yes, it's not linear.
Right.
It comes in waves, and it will be there for the rest of your life. But how do you, the different phases, right, of it? And we can talk about that in a second. But yes, it is not linear. And also, I just have to say too, right, when somebody dies, usually it is the first 2 weeks. That's when everybody comes around. But that's also when the person who's grieving the most is very, very, very busy. I mean, they've got so much to do, paperwork, plans, and,
Correct.
calling the family, all this stuff the first 2 weeks. And so they haven't even really had time to process anything. They could still be in that initial phase of shock or denial, in those first 2 weeks. And then you're right, absolutely. After the first 2 weeks, that's when we can actually go, oh, they would appreciate somebody just to come listen, just to listen to them, and just to be with them, because that presence, it's all about being, I think of the presence as a present.
Yes, it
Just
is a present.
sitting
Yes, it is.
that's the best present of all. I mean, yes, of course, flowers and cards and all that, phone calls. That's not just the presence without expectation.
Right. Right.
And
Sitting in the silence if needed. Yeah, absolutely.
yes, especially in that anticipatory phase too. Sitting in the silence. And I want to say, even when somebody's dying, that's an important thing to do when somebody's dying. But yes, yeah. So yeah. So that's the initial phase, is that denial, anger, shock. Okay.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
I also, we don't give enough talk about anticipating what can happen.
Good. Good. I was looking at that anticipatory grief too, right?
Yes. Right. Because especially when, this is especially true for, could be through a divorce or something like that, but I think of it a lot with the death and dying.
Yes.
And how people anticipate maybe how they're going to transition even, or maybe they're anticipating what's the family going to do without them, or they're anticipating, oh, I'm not going to be able to get out of bed. What am I going to do? What is it going to look like for me? And then, does my family know that I'm dying? That sort of thing. And then oftentimes what I see in that phase is that they want to keep a secret. Don't tell anybody he's dying. Don't tell him he's dying. And everybody's kind of doing, not everybody, this isn't for every
I know what you mean. No, I know it's not everyone, but it is. There are people that do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't say dying. Don't say transition. Don't say hospice, so pretend like it's not happening. And that's kind of maybe the worst thing, because to me, when people can actually talk about it, then it's a freedom in that.
It is a freedom. My stepdaughter is a sweetheart, but she's very, very against talking about anything about death. And my grandson asked Keith about what happens when you die. He was on the telephone with him, and Joanna was there, and she said, "You're not going to talk about this." And she grabbed the phone away from him. And he's about 10 years old, which the child needs to know something. He doesn't need to know every gory detail. But she's like, "We don't want to talk. We can't talk about. I don't want him to know about that." And I just felt that was a big disservice. It was a disservice to her father, who wanted to talk to him. The son asked the question and wasn't able to get the answer. And then the mother shut the whole thing down because of her fears. So, yeah. It's really sad. Yeah.
And this is what I see. I see this too, right?
Do you?
Yeah. And why, and like in society, we don't like even this conversation about grief, which does the idea of dying. A lot of people don't want to hear about it so much. Like, okay, but of course we all are going to do that. And we all have grief. And how we approach it is so important. And because it is, I think of dying as a phase of life.
It's another portal for us. Yeah.
Portal, right. There is life after life. I mean, there is no question about life after life. There's no such thing as death. I really don't think so.
I don't believe so either. Yes, I agree.
we're just
Mhm.
letting go of this worn out vessel. Usually, it's a worn out
Yeah.
vessel. And
Yeah.
we're still as maybe more, I think probably more alive than ever without the body.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
all the
So I
joy,
have a
all the,
question. With your
yes,
dad being the way he was when you were growing up and you
yeah.
couldn't talk about it, when did you decide actually to go into nursing and then this particular side of nursing? And was it in response to perhaps what you had been? Yeah, I would love to
Well,
know. It-
I think um, it's all subconscious for me. It
Okay.
wasn't on
Okay.
purpose.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think it took me years to go from age 12 to I was about 31 maybe when I decided
Uh-huh.
to go to nursing school. So that was about
Okay.
almost 20 years there,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
I did
Mm.
a lot of different things. But I think when my mom died, I was wondering, where did she go? I mean, I was like trying to do
Sure.
things. And I was also, she was very metaphysical. I mean,
Oh,
my grandmother saw spirits, she was a medium.
okay. Okay.
My mother was an
Oh,
astrologer. So, I mean, it was, talking about
yeah.
spirits and stuff was kind of
Sure.
normal in our family,
Normal.
but we didn't talk that much about death and dying. But I do
Okay.
realize now, looking back, I think that's why I went into hospice.
I'm
But
sure it is.
I don't haven't put it, I haven't,
It
didn't
wasn't a
force.
conscious choice. Yeah, I understand. It was where you were led, and
Yeah,
you really do it so beautifully from what I
it was
understand,
accident.
so
I think it
yeah.
was accident.
Uh-huh.
I mean, honestly, I thought I was going to be a nutritionist, and so but when I went to
You're just feeding the soul in a different way, Kim, that's all.
I went to
Um,
the hospital to volunteer, and I said, "Wow, the nurses are having fun." And then, it just was kind of like that. Well, what brought more fun? Okay, hospice looked fun to me because of all
right,
the holistic approach. That's what was more
correct.
at my interest. And yeah, it's been a long time. I mean, I've never been bored of it since. Well, I've been, 97 is a while
Is it
to be
what? Yes,
to
it is. Yeah.
doing hospice. So yeah,
Wow.
so
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's just really wonderful. And, when, Kim and I were starting to discuss what we were gonna do, I said, the other part of it is that she has the mediumship, the metaphysicality, the understanding of angels and guides and things like that, and has actually seen departed leaving. And
yeah.
give us an example of that, if you can, from
Oh,
I know you have 100 stories, but maybe
right.
just one that you remember.
Sure, of course. Okay,
Yeah.
well, so here's an example of a woman who she was had a wonderful marriage, kind of I mean, even though she was like about 70, her husband was about 10 years younger. I remember this distinctly.
Okay.
And she was
Sure.
kind of in a semi-coma. As people are nearing death, they become minimally to non-responsive.
Correct.
Okay, so
Okay.
she was in that phase. And
Mhm.
the husband, somehow we got talking about mediumship. I don't remember how. I don't usually even bring it up. I don't
Mhm.
know. And then somehow I had, this book that I co-authored, The Last Breath. I said, well, the
Mhm.
next time I saw him, I
Mhm.
said, well, let me bring you this book. Okay. And so then somehow we talked about it. So then I said, it's okay if I check in with her. She was in a semi-coma. It's an easy way for me to see how they're doing
Yeah.
when they're in that semi-coma, because it's almost like they've already passed. You see,
Correct.
I mean,
Right.
this
Uh-huh.
conversation. So I saw her as her body, physical body on the bed, but she was actually up in the tree. Don't ask me. Her spirit was in the tree. Okay.
Sure,
But
sure.
it looked,
Yeah.
she was sitting, and she also had next to her one of her dogs that was in spirit
Okay.
as well. Okay.
Mhm.
So you knew the dog was already there to meet her. And she was giving me information about her life and the dog that I didn't
Oh,
know or anything. And I don't even remember what the
right.
information was, but I was relaying the whole thing back to the husband. This is what she's
Mhm.
telling me, blah, blah, blah. And he could validate the memories, whatever the memories were,
Sure. Oh,
about the
wow.
dog, about where the dog
Yeah.
sat in the house, about just, their relation, fun things they did, their travels. It was that sort of a thing, conversation. So then, that was before she died. Now, of course, then after she died, it was, I checked in again, and she was just more of a light, but she
Yeah.
was still Now, at that point, instead of being up in the tree, she was back in the house with him. But her spirit,
Well,
it was like her spirit sitting with him at the
yes.
table, following
Mhm.
him around the house. And so that's kind of cool. So I do often see right after they pass, they hang out near the family close by
Yeah,
for the
I thought they did.
usually
Yeah.
for the
Mhm.
3 months, I would say. Very, very easy to connect to, uh,
Mhm.
by the
Mhm.
family, like, tell her I'm here. I mean, I see this on the point. Tell her I'm here. Tell her I'm here. And hi, I mean, they're doing this, and I'm here. I'm here. Or I'm
Right?
just sitting in a chair, in my
Oh,
usual chair.
uh-huh.
Or I'm seeing lips talk. Right? I mean, it's just kind of amazing. That's amazing.
Wonderful.
So
It
they
is
don't leave.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And,
They're
it's
every
something
step.
about that, is an added benefit to people who are grieving because they do realize that these people haven't gone anywhere and
Right.
abandoned them. And that's
No.
an extra part of how cool it would be to have someone like you in a situation where someone was ready to pass or passing over. Really
Oh, yeah.
is.
It's
Yeah.
such a
Yeah.
joy. To
Oh,
me,
I bet.
it's
Yeah.
it's a joy, total
Yeah.
joy. And then, something else that happens as they're nearing death, or I don't even don't like the word death, but
I know.
as they
Transition.
near,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Okay, the family on the other side will change their clothes to have the really dressed up clothes. So, like the party clothes. I mean,
Yeah.
and then within about 24 hours. So, like if the family says to me, well, how long do you think they have? I get that question a lot.
Wow.
Um, and if I tune into the spirit world, sometimes I have to do it quietly. I mean, actually, most of the
Yeah.
time, I don't, you
Most
know
of
what I
the
mean?
time. Sure. Yes, I do. I do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I will look and say, oh, well, they still have their regular clothes on. So I know it's more than a day. It's worked, I would say, 95% of the time. And then if I see them in like formal attire, suits and ties and I often see wedding attire. I don't know, like they're getting
Hmm.
married or they're going to a wedding. That's maybe my symbology here, but I do see
Yeah.
that. And then of
Well,
course I see the parties, right?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. It
The
is a big event in one's life, so to speak, that they're,
oh
yeah,
yes,
so it makes sense. It's like a
oh yes,
wedding. It's like a family gathering, and most people do get dressed up. And of course, the church was so important, and especially in the area of the country you work,
uh-huh.
that's another part of it. Yeah,
The
I think.
church,
Yes,
uh-huh.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, but I mean, no matter where, like even when I used to work in Portland,
Oh,
Oregon,
okay.
and church isn't so
Uh-huh.
important. And no, there's no
Right.
difference actually. I don't see
There's no
any difference in the spirit. The only
okay.
thing I see different, I would say, is that in the area that I live in now, which is there's a over half, maybe 60% or so Latino,
Uh-huh.
and there's a very strong connection to Mother Mary.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I see Mother Mary quite a bit,
Uh-huh.
in the room with the families.
Oh, yeah, and that makes sense. It really does. And was it you or no? I guess Linda was saying Mother Mary appearances are going to start happening more and more and more, where a lot of people will see Mother Mary out,
Uh-huh.
out and about or whatever you want to say.
Oh, yeah,
And yeah, yeah, I know you do. She's one of your primary guides. So
right.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
I have
Well,
seen Mother Mary and, Master Yeshua, yep.
oh,
Yes.
wonderful. Yes. Well,
Mhm.
let's talk a little bit about some of the stages of grief.
Okay,
Let's
sure.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first
So,
one,
go ahead.
denial. I mean, I guess anticipatory would be the very first stage,
Would be the
right? You're
very first,
right.
right? Or shock that
Mm,
this is happening, right?
shock and denial, I kinda put those together.
Mhm.
Denial, shock, "Oh, this couldn't be happening to me, what?" Um, yes, and
Mhm.
that can actually go on for a while. Now, the stages are not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even though
Right.
you might see them
Yeah.
listed.
Right.
You can start at number 5 or number 4. I mean, there's not a linear
Right.
here.
Right. Mhm.
But, the denial part is, I mean, it's natural. Remember, this is natural for everybody, and we have to give ourselves time to go through the phases. And
Right.
we don't even have to label, right? But just know it's very natural to be in denial and also to have shock.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. It's totally,
Yeah.
disbelief, especially I think when it's someone who's been a very vibrant person
Yeah.
and has never really had any illness, or it's a young person
Yes. Yes.
facing something like this. It's like the parents tend to say, "What did I do wrong?" or "What, why
Yeah.
is this happening?" as well. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then anger, right? That's another big one.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
and and we as humans will find one we especially like. You know, like so if a person is an angry person, they're probably going to stick around on that anger longer. As we go through
Absolutely.
the different phases or fluctuate through. But anger, it's normal too. It's okay to be angry.
It's
Oh my
okay.
goodness! And especially
Yeah.
women, we have to remind women it's okay to be angry
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, because we don't feel we were entitled to, well, we haven't in the past felt we were entitled to our anger. But when my mom passed, I was very lucky because I didn't lose her at 12. I was 33, but that's still fairly young. But
Right.
in the year after she passed, I moved to a new state.
Uh-huh.
I had to leave behind my dad, who was living back home, and I gained 100 pounds.
Whoa.
And I don't think everybody goes through that, but this is the way that I handled my grief. And I was killing myself, of course, because I wasn't taking care of myself. Number one, I would lay in bed all day and cry.
Wow.
And it was horrible. And I had no one really to talk to because long distance phone calls cost money then. Remember, we had to use the home phone. And
Yeah.
so, I just bring this up mostly because it's going to be a very individual experience. Like you said, it could be we stay in one thing longer than the other thing, and there is no linear, but there might be even odd things that happen. Like maybe somebody decides they want to start drinking or have drug use, or, I hope that doesn't happen to them. But, sometimes those escapism things come up to the fore when we're grieving. Yeah.
Right, right. And sometimes
Mhm.
people, there it can be the anger can be very displaced. Like you get angry, sounds like you're angry at yourself, perhaps, right? For whatever reason.
For whatever reason. Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, but we can be angry at source. We can be angry at somebody else that doesn't have anything to do with it. Yes,
Correct.
just
Or the
dis
person that left us, and it's okay to be angry at them too, as long
yes.
as we can let that go at some point, because this was their plan. But there's not a lot of people that understand that. So it is something that we're very fortunate in the spiritual community to be able to communicate to people that, whereas other people, they're kind of just, they're not aware, I guess is the best word. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah.
Mhm.
People are getting more aware. And then I think of bargaining. We go from oftentimes we'll be bargaining with, well, okay, now God, if I do this, we won't let somebody die, or I'll be better now, or maybe bargaining. Well, let's see if I take them to the doctor more, maybe they won't be sick, or
Mm. Right.
you know,
Yes.
bargaining. Yeah,
Yes, or
yeah. So that's another.
I shoulda, woulda, coulda done better, in the past. It's all my fault. A lot of people will It's interesting that a lot of people die when the family's out of the room, because a lot of people are, like, begging them to stay, and the best thing you can do if somebody is ready to go, I believe, is to tell them it's okay, that you're going to be okay, and I don't think a lot of people understand that either. Yeah.
Yeah, what I see is that most people are getting that nowadays.
Oh, good.
They
Okay.
realize, well, especially when somebody's in hospice and their body's losing it, they know that it
Yes.
would be very selfish to keep somebody here in that
Mhm.
condition. So they do, but not everybody. There's still sometimes that lingering one or two
Right.
people have a hard time saying goodbye. And
Yeah, I get it.
yeah,
Mhm.
and what I usually tell people is just because you said goodbye doesn't mean they're going to go that second. That just gives them permission to go whenever they're ready.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I think the biggest gift you can give someone, according to what I've read and others that have told me, is to be in the room when someone passes, to be holding their hand, to be
Mhm.
a guide for them. And do you see that in hospice when you're working
Um,
with these people?
well, I see people sometimes like to go by themselves
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because I mean, some people love to be surrounded by other people.
Uh-huh.
I would say this is individual.
Sure.
Some people wait for their family to go because they feel like they're protecting their loved ones by leaving when
Hmm.
they're not there. Like it might be too hard for them.
Sure.
And then some people, when by holding on their hand, that actually is like an attachment. You
Makes
see,
sense.
and then
Makes
some
sense.
people are not able to handle it, and then they say, "Oh, they've had their last breath," and they start bringing them back, trying to bring them back. You see, so
Yeah.
it's very individual.
Yeah. Well, you would be the one that would know since you're there so much of the time and you're in a situation where you know for sure these people are going to pass within a period of time. Yeah.
Yes, right, right.
Yeah.
I usually
Yeah.
do tell people to let them have their alone time.
Okay. Good.
Give it, tell them, but do tell them, say, "I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I'll be back in 10 minutes." That gives
Uh-huh.
that person who's transitioning the opportunity, if
Yeah.
they want to go then.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about some of the other types of grief that you mentioned and we talked about earlier, which is a divorce, which is a loss of a job, which is financial difficulties.
Yeah.
Um, these are times of grief most people are not aware of unless the person tells. Well, it could be the same way about somebody you losing a person, but um, do you believe that we go through the same stages in
I
those
do.
instances as well? Okay.
I do. I really do. Now, maybe it won't be as deep, but it
Right.
could be. It
It could
certainly
be.
could,
Yeah.
especially loss of health or finance. I mean, there's a lot of things
Yeah.
because
There are.
it's
Mhm.
these huge changes. You
Right.
I would say, yes, I feel the same. And this is why this is even more important, that we kind of know
Mm.
what to do or when we get stuck. Like if somebody has gained 100 pounds, or if
Right.
this another phase, right? That depression, which also is
Mhm.
probably what that was around. Well, if the depression doesn't go away, then that can be kind of dangerous.
It is dangerous. Yeah. Because people can do foolish things when they aren't under someone's care for something like that, especially. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Um,
I've seen people even suicide, when somebody else died.
mhm. Wow.
I had a 2 men who were, just like I mean, amazing partners, and,
Hmm.
so when his partner passed, he just couldn't handle it, and so he took his own life, and, I mean, I think it was a few months, but that depression, I guess this is the thing about depression as a stage, if it
Hmm.
does go away, I mean, and what is chronic versus acute depression, right?
Right.
Or, and then you have to look at that. And I know you could probably talk to a therapist and they can tell you exactly. I always feel like length of time is important, but also how it affects your daily life, how much it
Hmm.
affects your daily life.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I am pleased now that there are people out there that do grief counseling, not only professionally, but there are spiritual grief counselors and
Yes.
just another ear, somebody that doesn't really know you as a friend, or they can give you advice, let's say, or listen to you, and they can feel heard and not judged by
Yes.
somebody else.
I
So
think that's so important not to be judged,
yeah,
but also normalize everything, normalize these feelings, and uh, not to tell somebody how they're supposed to feel.
thank you. I agree. Yeah, yeah. It says here, there's a mourner's bill of rights I found, and I thought it was wonderful because it says you have the right to experience your own unique grief. So,
Yeah.
if somebody says to you, well, my father died and I didn't do that, you aren't me. You aren't me, and I'm not you. And yeah.
I love
So
that.
I know it. There is no rule book. There is no time frame. There is no judgment. You just do what you need to do. It's as individual as a fingerprint. And I love that because it
Yes,
really
yes.
is. And it could be that maybe you grieve differently with the grief that you're dealing with. I mean, my first grief was really my mom because I didn't have grandparents. And so when my mom passed, and then 5 years later, my dad passed, and I've lost both my brothers. As I've lost my brothers as an older woman, I have grieved, but I also took knowing that they were in a great place. They were with my parents. They were having a good time. Yes, I was going to miss them, but I don't really miss them because they're around me all the time. So there's a difference. And I also noticed that a lot of people have a lot of grief around animal loss, more so even than human loss,
Yes.
because animals are so
Yes.
intimately connected to us. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, if you meet
Uh,
somebody and, "Oh, yeah, my mom died, my dad died, but oh, my dog," I mean,
I know.
that it's my dog that I wanna talk to. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes, and
Absolutely.
there's nothing
That
wrong with that. There's nothing. Some people think that's silly and they're just animals, but no, they aren't just animals. They're
no.
not. They're part of your soul family. And people will say, "Well, why do you keep getting dogs if you know they're going to die?" Within a and I'm like, because my life is so much better when they're here, and the grief is there, unfortunately, but I just experienced so much joy around them that to not have them would be grief for me. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes, and the thing is, I mean, yes, they're a lot of work and all,
Yeah.
absolutely, but they
Mhm.
are unconditional love, and
They are.
and it is, I think, when we feel love, whether it's through a dog, a fish, a cat, a bird, whatever,
Uh,
could be even a tree, right? When you can,
right,
if you can feel that from a tree, then that's why we're here, is to share love.
right. Mhm.
And so,
Yeah,
and dogs or cats, right? Are most of our pets like that.
sure.
They
Yeah,
That's what they do.
yeah. It's amazing, and you're right. It's funny, I was with my grown children, and we went out to lunch the other day, and they were watching, we watched, Anatomy of a Fall that has a
Oh,
beautiful dog in it, and my son is not spiritual at all, but he says, "I hope if the dog dies, I'm gonna lose it." He was so, yeah, everybody that loves animals, I think, feels that way. Mhm.
Oh, yeah, and animals on the other side, I say on the other side, across the veil, whatever
Uh-huh.
dimension, are very present, just like our family, our people family,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's the animals that bring us across,
Yes, they
right? Just
do.
like the lady that was up in the tree with her dog,
Yes.
right? Or I
Well,
see
Kim,
pets.
you did a reading for me, and my father came through, and the first thing you said was he's taking care of all the dogs, and there were tons, and I knew that was my dad.
Oh,
'Cause he do it. Yeah, yeah.
oh, yeah, yeah.
It was a nice feeling. It really was.
Yes, yes, I mean, there was one lady I had that she wasn't, just we couldn't figure out why she wasn't passing, and then it
Mhm.
was when the dogs showed up, her 2 dogs in spirit, when they came to get her, then she was ready
Yeah,
to go.
she was ready. Yeah. She didn't wanna go there without him. That's something. Mhm.
Yes,
Um,
um, I was gonna say too, the first year
uh-huh.
is like lots when you go through the holidays, the first year,
Yeah,
especially when you're
that's what I was
talking
gonna
about,
say.
could be for people or animals, really, because when you do, your birthdays, anniversaries, day of passing, day of birth. I already said birthdays, but,
Mother's Day,
holidays,
Father's Day. Yeah, all those things. Yeah. Mhm.
those are that first year's big. And so how do people get through that? I mean, I feel like any ritual that feels good to them, light a candle, maybe have have food, for instance, that they liked. Serve that in honor of them. Even have the table set with their chair, a chair for them. You know,
Mhm.
my sister, who she's lost a grandchild and a son. You know, and the grandchild was only 6 months old, and the son was only 30.
Oh, I'm so
But
sorry.
what she does is every time she goes out to eat, what she does this almost every day. She goes out to lunch every day. Um,
Mhm.
she always has a chair for Matt. You know,
Okay.
and she just says, well, she's going out to lunch with Matt. She goes by herself, but Matt's there.
Huh.
they
Good for
they
her.
have lunch together.
Good for her. Yeah, and I bet your mother's there, but she just doesn't realize it. And your
Yeah,
mom's
yeah,
probably there with her.
right.
I love
Yeah.
that idea. I do. As a matter of fact, I have the spirit deck, which is a very cool deck, and it's called The Beloved Dead.
Oh,
And
wow.
I love it. And there's one card in here that is called the spirit chair. And they're all
Oh,
old-fashioned pictures, but it's a chair that has sort of like a cloud in it. And I really do believe that it's like the spirit of somebody that says, "I'm sitting right here with you. I don't know why you're looking for me over there or at the cemetery.
exactly.
I'm not there." Yeah.
That's right. Or even if you have a celebration of life, same thing, or a funeral,
Correct.
have a
Correct.
space, have a
Yeah.
spot
Yeah.
because you know they're there.
You do know
Yes.
they're there. They
I
want to
want
see
to
who shows up.
I want to mention something about how men versus women versus children
Okay.
might
Yeah.
show grief because it is
Okay.
different, just like in
Okay.
life. I mean, if you look
Mhm.
at a women like to talk usually, right?
Yes.
So you're going to find women will usually want to talk about things or
Mhm.
just to be with friends and just to kind of do that. Now, men tend to want to do things like, okay, I got to fix the hose. I got to check out what's going on in the yard. I got to mow the lawn. I got to fix that pipe, whatever it is. They want to do. That's kind of a way they process grief.
Sure. Sure.
And I
Being
and I was
busy.
being
Mhm.
busy, right? But for me, actually, I forgot about this. I like to vacuum when I'm sad or when I'm anxious. I vacuum. I just
Oh,
so
you can
that's one
come
thing
over to my house anytime you're sad.
I don't know, vacuuming.
I
And
get
then
it.
and kids, they'll go from sad to play, sad to
Right.
happy. I mean, back and
Yes,
forth. And we'll same with the dogs too, because dogs grieve, dogs and cats grieve as well.
they do.
And
Mhm.
for you'll some you hear this sometimes the animals don't come out of it. They take them months when they've lost somebody, either a person or another animal.
Yes. It's very
So
sad because there's no logic for them. It's like, did they leave me? I'm imagining that they're thinking, "Did they leave me? Did I do something wrong?" Even though we
right,
don't know, but yeah, yeah.
right. Oh yeah.
Wow, wow.
Absolutely. But kids, you just have to no, give them something to draw or play
Mhm.
or music.
Yes.
That's very good therapy for kids.
Mhm.
Drawing, music, playtime, dancing. Well, I mean,
Sure.
you can say the same thing for adults too. That's also very good
No, that's
therapy
very therapy. Yeah, definitely, definitely.
to help process. And I'm gonna say journaling. And if
Uh-huh.
you like to journal, or even if you don't like to journal, but just journaling
Journal
through
and
your
let it
grief.
out. Yeah, I
Yep.
agree. I agree.
And
And share the memories, at some point when you're feeling strong enough. It's very, very important to keep memories alive. What you did with this person at this period of time and the funny stories or the experiences that the family had or the friendship had. And I don't think that that's probably possible in the beginning, although I have seen that with this new way of funerals, which is a celebration of life now more so, people get up and really give others, put them in stitches for stories, and it's very cathartic.
oh yes.
Mm,
If
yeah.
you think about yourself on the other side, would
Mhm.
you like your family to be crying and no, you want them to be in joy. Remember, the departed loved one is in joy, is in unconditional love.
Right,
And that's
right.
what they would like us to feel as well.
Mhm. Mhm. No,
And
you're
also
absolutely right.
for them to feel, I mean, for they would like us to feel their love. But sometimes with that grief is being so thick around us, it's hard to get those signs from your loved ones. I'll hear all the time, I want a sign. How come I'm not getting signs? But my brother-in-law, who isn't very close to my mom, is getting a sign. But why am I not getting a sign?
Yeah. Looking too hard, right? Yeah.
Too
Yeah.
hard or too deep in the grief.
Okay. Okay.
And then,
Can't see the forest through the trees at that point. Yeah, I get it.
right.
Yeah.
Because of course, to reach, their level of unconditional love, we got to rise up a little bit.
Right. Absolutely. For me, it's always songs. And I always know when my parents are around, when the Glenn Miller Band starts playing on a radio and I always know songs that my brothers would have listened to, and I know they're around then. And I just take those as signs. It doesn't have to be, hi, Allie, how you doing? It doesn't have to be that. It's never outside my ear, but I have it inside my head many times.
Yes. Oh, right,
Yeah.
right. Or I think a lot of people feel the presence,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
my sister, but she sees a lot like a shadow. Like I just know there's somebody, I see a little bit of a shadow, but I'm not really sure who that is.
Right, because instead of looking from over here, like, peripherally, she wants to see it too,
Yeah.
so she
Yeah.
moves her head too
Yeah.
fast.
But she knows it's somebody because she
Sure.
knows that. And I like with our pets, we might feel them against our leg, we might feel them lick our leg or even lick our face, or we
Mhm.
might even hear sometimes the rattling, or maybe even on the bed, feel the
Yes,
indent on the bed.
I feel that a lot
Um,
I felt that with my animals, yeah. Mhm.
oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
yeah,
Wow. Wow. And no,
especially
they
when
are.
they're first gone. Yeah, when they're first gone, they're like, "Ooh, I'm much lighter now," but, I still have that indent on the bed. Yeah.
Wow. I remember when one of my cats, Crystal, when she left. Now, unfortunately, a coyote got her, but I didn't know what happened. And but she showed me the next morning. She came up,
Mhm.
which is her normal time to come wake me up about 5 a.m. And I saw her clear as day, face to face. She was right here, and she showed me that it was a coyote. She showed that to me, and she also showed me it was my mom who caught her. And then my
Oh,
mom even later validated, like, I was there to catch Crystal. I caught her. I caught her. Like she was so proud of herself to be there to
yeah.
catch Crystal. Our loved ones
I have
always
goosebumps.
going
Oh my
on,
goodness. Yeah, yeah.
know what's going on with us, whether we are expecting to transition or not.
Mhm.
They
That's
and
one.
they know. The
They
spirit
do.
world knows what's about to happen. So we're never die alone. We're never going to be, like, okay, was that an accident? Now, if I died in an accident, does that mean nobody's going to meet me? you know?
Or if I commit suicide, a lot of
Right.
people, in the past have always, "Oh, you go straight to hell," but I think it's been shown that it isn't that way at all,
Oh,
you
no,
know?
not at all. It's the
Um,
same. Oh, no,
yeah,
absolutely no
uh-uh,
difference.
no
No,
different. Yeah, yeah.
not at
I'm
all.
wondering about people who, it must be very, very traumatic and very, very difficult for people who've lost someone, let's say, during the COVID when you couldn't go in to say goodbye, and
Right.
and Um, I don't know how to process something. I wouldn't know how to process something like that. That has to be one of the hardest, or in a war situation, like I've seen a new documentary about the Ukrainians that died in Mariupol, and they had to bury them all in this mass grave. And you don't even know where they're buried. Not that it matters because they're all up here, but you didn't have any closure. You didn't have any kind of,
Yeah.
or if you have a murdered child or something that hasn't been found, those types of
That's
things have to
that
create
is
worse. Yeah, yeah,
right. Oh my gosh. I mean, that would be a harder grief, right? Because you never got to say goodbye. That is a harder grief. But I mean, you and I know we can always talk to somebody no matter where they are. There is no time and space. So we can
right,
still say goodbye even after the fact.
right.
So, or even somebody that's on a plane on the way to see somebody, knowing they're going to pass, but yet they don't make it there in time. I mean, there's some of that, a lot of people feel
Oh,
guilty.
my. Yes, it happened to me. I was on a plane going to see dad, and he was in bad shape, and I
I
felt him
know.
sitting next to me on the
There you
plane.
go.
Mhm,
See?
mhm. I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Right.
amazing. Yeah, yeah,
Yes. And I know the whole COVID thing is hard.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm not even sure. what to say except for it must be even more hard to lose somebody when you weren't anticipating the
True.
death.
That's do you think though that anticipating, there are a lot of people that say, for instance, I feel so bad for my parent, my child, my friend, and I wish that they would pass and be free of pain and so on and so forth. And we think we're going to be fine if that happens, but then when it happens, we're not fine.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it's like we anticipate that our grief will be better, but it really isn't any better. You still go through those stages, I think.
Still go through the stages, of course.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
and then there's a guilt for thinking, or maybe they even made somebody die because they wished it. And it wasn't really wishing. It's really,
Right.
what I tell people is allow them to go
Right.
and detach.
Right.
Allow the detachment, allow them to go. They're not giving up and you're not giving up on them. It's not about giving up. It's
Right.
about allowing to go,
Right. Wow. Yeah.
releasing.
Releasing them. Yep.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, I did read that grief is most of the time emotional, but I have
uh-huh,
explained that with me it was also weight gain. But there are other things: fatigue, lower immunity, aches and pains. And the other thing was when this is something that I've heard people say too, and I just want to mention how silly it really is. But
yeah,
my mother died when she was 68 years old.
oh, yeah,
She had a massive heart attack and dropped dead. I'm
uh-huh,
68 this year, and I can't tell you how frightened I was. When you get to the age where someone passes, you tend to think, oh,
yeah,
well, because you haven't experienced their life beyond that age, and you
yes,
can't even feel like you know what's going to happen to you next. So that's an
yeah.
important,
It
yeah.
is. That happened to me too when my mom passed, because I think she was 31. My sisters had
Uh-huh.
the same thing. When they got to 31, all of us, I understand exactly what you're saying. I hear it all the time.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that most people do go past. You know what I mean? Once you
True.
get past a year, and I guess, okay, I guess it doesn't just because your mother did it doesn't mean you're
Right.
gonna do that.
Doesn't mean you're gonna do it. That's absolutely right. It's almost a silly thing to think about, but it does happen, and, yeah, if you went and my husband went through it at 53 because his dad died at age 53, and, he was sort of glad to be 54, when it got to that point, so,
Yeah. So it's
uh,
normal, very normal.
it is very
Yeah.
normal, and everybody should normalize grief because it's sort of abnormal. No, that isn't even right. Normalize grief, as anything that you may experience, and it doesn't have to be on the list. Let's put it
Right.
that way. Yeah.
That's right. It doesn't have
Mm,
to be on the list. I like
mm,
that.
yeah,
But there's other things, absolutely. Sure.
yeah.
Um, you may have flashbacks. That could be another phase for you.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
so
That's
yeah,
very
but
true.
the problem could be is if somebody gets stuck in it
Right.
and doesn't come to that point of acceptance and
Uh-huh.
hope.
Right.
Then it could be a problem, and that could take, who knows, months to a year maybe to get to that, to be what would I would consider, um, normal grief,
Right. Right.
but there's
Well,
abnormal grief. Yeah,
I've had a friend who, was divorced and didn't want the divorce. And that's the other thing. If you don't want it, then your grief is a lot deeper than if you're the one that instigates it. Even though you still have grief, it's not the
right,
same. But
right,
this person did not want the divorce, and it took her 10 years to get over it. And it wasn't every day, but it was there. It was something that she couldn't move past.
yes, and so when you're noticing somebody that's not moving past, it can get stuck in your body. It can get stuck in our throat. We
Uh-huh.
feel like the crying, the tears can get stuck in the throat. That can get stuck in the heart. I've seen people start having heart attacks after somebody else has passed, right? They start having heart problems when they never had heart problems before. Because it's
Right.
all about energy, and we're talking
Right.
about energy here in the throat, in the heart, and also in the lungs. In Chinese medicine, grief is held in the lungs. So all these areas are very vulnerable to grief. And so, you could also go to an energy medicine practitioner. You could work on yourself. Just know, again, these are normal. But when we get past it and we maybe isolate, or maybe we're considering suicide or something like that, then we know it really, to get one-on-one help or to go to support groups, that for whatever kind of grief it is. Doesn't matter if it's divorce, doesn't matter if it's health or death or
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that I was going through some financial difficulties and my back hurt so bad, really, really bad. And that's where you hold financial worry.
Yes.
I needed to have something, some meridians moved and some acupuncture, and it really did help it a lot. So,
yes. Remember, everything is energy. And
Everything
our energy field affects our body. It starts in the energy field first and goes into the body. But now also we can just hold our head, like we hold here in the back of our head. Like this is for calming. You're holding here.
Yeah,
And the back of the
that's
head is grief. You hold the
Yes.
calming and the grief together. And that is a good self-soother there for
Well, when we are shocked by something, or if we are overwhelmed by something, the first thing oh my God, we all do
That's right.
this.
Yes.
And there is a reason why we do this.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's wonderful. But I did not know that this was grief. And
Yes.
I think that's very valuable to know. Thank you. Yeah, that's wonderful. Wow. Is there anything else we didn't cover that you might want us to talk about?
No, but just remember, for yourself or for others, presence for yourself. Allow yourself time. Allow yourself to just maybe kick the bed, cry. Allow yourself to do that kind of stuff.
Yell in
It's
a
okay.
pillow, punch it. Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff. You want to get it out, really. You don't want to hold it back, because this is where we start having health issues if we don't
Correct.
let it out. Okay, so there's that. And then if you notice somebody who's having issues, encourage them the same, and then also, of course, groups, and then, even maybe say, hey, let's go do an art class together, doing art, drawing, dancing, yoga, whatever, any kind of walks in the park, nature's a wonderful cure for many,
Yes, it
many
is.
things.
It really is. Wow.
Yeah.
Or
Thank you,
hunker
Allie.
down with your animals. Thank you, Kim. This has been wonderful. I hope that it helps others. At least it gives them some tips, and to know there is no way that we particularly have to grieve. There's no time period on it. But also to look out for things that we may put ourselves into that will need to be moved along for us in order to have hope again, have faith again, and see the sunlight. So thank you so
Right.
much.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
And thank you
This
for
is-
everything you do for this community. You're a wonderful, wonderful teacher.
I just
Thank
say
you.
the same to you, dear.
Thank you. Much love. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.